Perhaps the Eagles' most underrated move this offseason just revealed Nick Sirianni's plan to repeat in 2025, which includes some fresh changes on offense that I think you're gonna love. Also, what Madden just did to diss the Eagles once again, and the most surprising standouts from Eagles minicamp. I'm Thomas Mott, this is the Thomas Mott Show. The big question for the Birds heading into the 2025 season is how the Eagles will attack being the defending Super Bowl champions, as every team you face following a Lombardi trophy is not only going to give you their best game, but do whatever it takes to stop your best player, or players, that helped you win the previous year. Well, of course, every single defending Super Bowl champion is different, but it seems like this year's Eagles, compared to, say, the 2018 version that just won a Super Bowl the previous year, are doing some extra things to make sure they're as focused as possible to repeat in 2025. And at the forefront of this movement is definitely head coach Nick Sirianni, who deserves a ton of credit here. Sure seems like he's made it his personal mission to shape this team's mindset and focus on the now instead of the past. Sirianni gets enough credit for how great of a motivator he is. There were plenty of pivot points even last season where the Birds head coach was the driving factor in turning things around, change the mindset and change the players, keeping everyone focused and avoiding the rat poison that so often ruins NFL locker rooms. According to TE Dallas Goedert via NBC Sports' incredible podcast with him just the other day, Sirianni has done everything possible this offseason to prepare the Birds for a chance to repeat in 2025.
We've been able to talk with many great players, Peyton Manning. We talk about sustained success, and we got his opinion on how to do it multiple times. Hearing Jalen and his conversations with Michael Jordan about his sustained success and be able to do it three-peat, multiple in two different times. But I think as a team, we're all hungry to get back, and we know that it's not just going to be given to us. It's going to be even harder than it was last year because we are defending it. So we just need to find ways to stay hungry, stay fresh, and keep putting the pedal to the metal.
Of course, the best way to repeat is to keep what worked in your explosive offense in 2024 and throw out what didn't. An undertaking that very few have actual inside info on, but remains a monumental task for newly crowned offensive coordinator Kevin Patullo. KP not only has to make sure all the superstars' mouths are fed every single week, that the offense as a whole adapts to inevitable changes in the way defenses will attack Philadelphia. And according to Goedert, once again, he's loving the changes that KP has implemented, especially in the passing game. It's been a real focus under the new regime.
But it'll have his nuances, and I'm really excited with how the offseason has started with Kevin designing the offense and calling up the plays. I feel like he's been able to see what we had success with in all three different eras of coordinators, and he'll bring his own little flair and twist and combination of the success that we've had and get rid of the things that don't, hopefully. And the pass game, I feel like the terminology's changed a little bit, but they tried to group it and put it in categories that make sense. So there's a few new terms, a few old terms. But I think for me, being in the same system the last 4 years, it stayed similar enough that it hasn't been too hard for me to pick up with.
Of course, I'd love to know just how different it is. I know this question keeps popping up. You see John Clark mentioning it there, and Dallas Goedert saying it's different, but it's not that different. My main question is there going to be a hangover? There was definitely a little bit of a lull early in the season last year where they were trying to figure out what worked well in the previous offensive coordinator system. Will that be here in 2025? I'm unsure, but that's a big question heading into next season. Of course, I'm also excited about Dallas Goedert as a whole and his potential in this new edition of the Eagles offense. Kind of feel like each year, all of us predict a breakout season for the Birds tight end, and he's just on too stacked of a roster to truly get enough chances to, let's say, break 1,000 yards. However, even a 10% uptick in targets from last season compared to this year could be absolutely massive, as he's shown that ever since A.J. Brown arrived, the third worst cover guy on an opposing team is going to be on 88, at least at best. Of course, Goedert can cook, and definitely did for the latter part of the season, just got to give him a chance. Speaking of not cooking, and shout out to Madden 26, which, of course, Saquon is gracing the cover of, which is cool, but the beta version of the game, team ratings just dropped, which are not the final ratings, as people are quick to point out, but usually pretty close, and the quote-unquote super team the media tells us the Eagles are, rated as an 87 overall. That's the same as, wait for it, the Browns and Bengals, and below the Cowboys, Dolphins, Ravens, 49ers, and Chiefs. And of course, this is the beta version, and a lot of people in the comment section will say it'll change for the actual version. Normally, for the beta version of Madden ratings to the actual version of Madden ratings, it's a 1 or 2 point up or down swing. So if they stay below, honestly, any other team, because the Eagles roster is the best right now, just file that away for whenever your friend says, but they're a super team, you go, Madden has them below the Browns right now, and it's at least funny to go ahead and think about. Now, moving back to minicamp standouts, and I can't help but shout out all the great things I keep hearing from linebacker Smael Mondon. by no means needs to be this good early on in his career due to the fact that he is a rookie and has a lot of great linebackers ahead of him currently on the depth chart, but he was considered one of the standouts from the past couple of weeks, and yet when asked about where he thinks he is, at least heading into training camp, the humble Mondon mentioned that, quote, "My mindset is that I'm here to work. I'm here to do whatever the coaches ask me to do. I'm one of those guys who puts his head down and works. That's about it. The more work I put in, the more I'm going to get out of it. That's where I've always been." My guess right now is that Smael, of course, is down on the depth chart day one of camp, but becomes a special team star similar to what Oren Burks did during the early point of the 2024 season and is ready for who knows if he actually needs his number called. Training camp has tons of practices, and so he's going to have tons of chances to become the unexpected star of August and September. Stay tuned. I think it's going to be very interesting. Now, earlier this week, myself and Josh Davis met for our Wednesday Link Live, and we talked about a lot of other different breakout candidates and guys who were very impressive during both minicamp and OTAs, and the list of players that we talked about are not getting a lot of national media coverage, and I think you guys might enjoy. And so, we don't have necessarily footage. We talked about this on our show from minicamp, but there have been names that have popped up that have been impressive so far, Josh. And I think the name that continues to kind of rattle around in my head right now is Josh Uche. When Lane Johnson goes to the podium and is asked by a reporter, give us an edge rusher. And the first edge rusher out of his mouth is Josh Uche. That's like the honest take. It's like, okay, first thing that comes to mind is Josh Uche. And then he mentioned everybody else, and I'm sure Ojulari's doing stuff. Obviously, he mentions Nolan, and we all know Jokes Hunt's going to go crazy this year. But Josh Uche, it's like, what happens if he's good? I can't stop thinking about this idea of what happens if either him or Ojulari are actually good this year. If they are, I don't know how. I just don't know how you're going to block this defensive front because they're getting one-on-ones every single snap. They never ever will an Eagle edge rusher be double teamed as long as Jalen Carter's on the football field. We know Moro Jomo was like the big dark horse in the entire league to break out this coming season. But when I keep hearing that Josh Uche is like, whoa, I don't know. It just gets me so excited because the whole thought process was like, well, you lost pass rushers in free agency and there goes Milton Williams. They're going to take a step back. This defensive line might be way better than last year. And sacks were kind of a thing where we were comparing to the 2022 team, and it was like, oh, wow, they're way below on sacks. They don't have the Hassan Reddick type superstar. It could be really scary for the rest of the National Football League if they hit on another pass rusher and they pay him like $4 million this year. That, to me, was my first big takeaway from minicamp was like, holy cow, this could be really scary if one of those guys hits.
Yeah, it would be very scary, quite honestly, because you look at it and say, sack numbers, I think they were like 12th or 13th in the league. But then the pressure percentage, they were 28th. So they didn't generate, they were very efficient. But that also tells you, like, if there was a regression to the mean based on those same numbers, you wouldn't have the same amount of sacks. Like, they were getting sacks at a very good clip, but not creating as many pressures as what you would expect, And so hopefully both those numbers kind of increase, or you're at least able to fluster the quarterback. Now, we saw that take off in the playoffs, so there wasn't as many concerns because you started having that in the playoffs. You had it in the Super Bowl, obviously, with the 6 sacks on Mahomes. But I'm with you there, and I think that Uche's given Lane fits back even going up against the Patriots. Like, Lane has had some issues with Josh Uche, so I think that's also kind of continued effort of like, okay, Lane's noticed his game. He's realized it when he was playing against him and on a different team, and so now it's also the recognition of, yeah, we're battling in practice, and this is that same dude. Now, I think everybody understands that Uche did not do well with the Chiefs. He was also their version of a Bryce Huff, albeit a lot cheaper, but he was a healthy scratch in the Super Bowl, so that's not, a good omen anytime that you're doing that. But the fact that he's actually been signed for an incredibly cheap deal, has an opportunity, they've talked about it in the room with just about everybody, but there's a chance for him to make a move, get a big contract. I mean, if he has, 6, 7 sacks, something like that, I mean, he could jumpstart his career, get a new contract, and also make a big name. So multiple ways there.
It's just going to be fascinating. I think it's going to be very, very interesting. Sorry, I was getting a DM from somebody talking about the Eagles, but I'll answer that one in a second. Can we talk about A.J. Dillon for a second, Josh? I don't know if you saw my video today, but I did this kind of deep dive on Saquon and the running game. And A.J. Dillon was another guy who, you hear the rumblings, like, he just looks good, right? He just looks healthy, and you go, okay, what does that mean, though? And then you start to think about A.J. Dillon in this offense. And I did this whole deep dive on Saquon Barkley because I had a subscriber, and I want to make sure I shout him out because I don't know if he DM'd you as well. It was Dylan Chapman. Did he send you this website where he broke down 2,000-yard rushers in the season after? I don't know if you got that.
I don't know. I'm not sure. I mean, I don't think I got it, actually. No.
He basically, I got this DM from Dylan. He said for a recent job interview, he had to do a data analytics project, and he put together what happened after the previous 8 2,000-yard rushers had their 2,000-yard season. What was it like the following season? And he did this awesome thing I'm going to put in the chat right now. It's a really great website. And so deep dive. And basically the simple answer was, if you don't want to read the whole article, which you should, every single rusher who hit 2,000, except for Barry Sanders in 98, essentially had a big drop. Now, Barry Sanders had a small drop. He had 1,500 yards the following season, but most of them got injured. Most of them saw a dramatic drop in their carries, and most of them went from like this superstar all-world back to coming down back down to earth. A lot of it was injuries, but still. And so you start thinking about Saquon Barkley, and he was during OTAs and minicamp talking about keeping his body healthy. And I think that's going to be a big focus for Philadelphia heading into this season. Not using him way less, Josh. He had 380 some carries or whatever it was, but using him a little bit less enough to make sure the wear and tear is not there, to make sure you have him and can use him whenever you need him. And I think A.J. Dillon could really be that kind of change of pace, LeGarrette Blount type running back that we had for so short. It was like this one season in 2017 where you had this absolute bruiser of a running back who still had some open field and open space abilities, and he was incredible. I love LeGarrette Blount, and they've never been able to recreate it. And Rashad Penny seemed like their last attempt to get this kind of washed up big back, and we were both big Rashad Penny fans. Go back and watch the tape because we were all in on him, and it didn't really work out. It feels like A.J. Dillon might be the guy to actually work out this year. And it's not to take a ton of snaps away from Saquon, but maybe more than they gave Kenny Gainwell, this past year. I'm curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I've kind of gone back and forth on that because I also did a little bit, not of a deep dive of the analytics on it necessarily as much, but more so everybody's got their 53-man roster projections, who's going to be on the team, who's the bubble candidate to get cut and everything else. And I do find it interesting whenever we take a look at the beat writers who are in the building a lot more than everybody else, gets to see things. As you mentioned, really nothing gets to be filmed, but they see it so they can report on it at least. So from another person's viewpoint there, and there were multiple beat writers who actually had A.J. Dillon as a cut candidate. And I was surprised by that, which is why, I made the video and I was like, here's projections, potentials. On my first 53-man projection, I still had him making it, but it was just strange to see a couple beat writers going like, oh yeah, hey, A.J. Dillon might not even make the roster. And so I don't know. The more that I look at it here, I'm saying Will Shipley to me is still RB2. I think that he's going to be very involved, or much more involved than he was last year, but I think you saw him get some, spell Saquon, a few plays. My expectation would be seeing him get involved more in the receiving game. But I really want to see early on, and what I'll be watching for quite a bit, certainly in the preseason, is Will Shipley's pass blocking. Because if he has issues there, A.J. Dillon can pass block. Now, we know Saquon can, so there's no issues there. But A.J. Dillon, if you need to know, or if you don't know this already, A.J. Dillon can pass block very well. So for a running back, if Will Shipley starts to struggle there, then all of a sudden I would see absolutely that A.J. Dillon gets a little bit of a bigger role. They can trust A.J. Dillon to put him on the field to block for Jalen. But if not, if Will Shipley can handle and hold his own, then I kind of think that it'll be a fairly clear, like A.J. Dillon's the third, and then Will Shipley is the RB2, because they still have a lot of hype and praise for Will Shipley. But that is the question mark, because he just didn't have as many opportunities last year. So we'll see.
Well, and Will Shipley was mentioned during OTAs as someone that they threw the football a lot to. He was really good at Clemson, catching the football out of the backfield. A.J. Dillon also, surprisingly, pretty good catching the football out of the backfield. And we know Saquon is. They just didn't throw a lot to him this past season. It's an interesting trio of running backs. It really is. And it's crazy because, 99% of our focus is on Saquon. But, I mean, if you just have scenarios where you can, one less linebacker in the hole and pass protection that he has to absorb that hit, and one less third down and one run where he has to absorb all that contact, and you just keep him a little healthier. I mean, the saying the sky's the limit's dumb, because we saw what the sky was last year, and it was like, is it going to be better than what it was? I mean, probably not, but how much worse, whatever.
Sure.
But if he's just healthy and good to go, you saw what he could do in the postseason, and I don't know, it's exciting. It's so crazy to me that we're at this point as Eagle fans, where anywhere you want to go on the roster right now, Josh, we could talk about players in backup roles who are super exciting. I mean, literally, like, you could roll a dice and be like, let's talk about defensive tackle. Moro Ojomo, I mean, he's got to be like the dark horse breakout defensive player in the NFL. Not on the Eagles, in the NFL. Linebacker. Everyone says Shahad Campbell looks pretty darn good. Smael Mondon, I think, had a pretty darn good OTA period where people were like, oh, this is why he was a starter at UGA. Those UGA starters on defense, they kind of know what they're doing, especially a linebacker, Nakobe Dean. And so,
I'm just saying.
I mean, just go through the list. You did a video today on Terrance Marshall Jr. How about Terrance Marshall Jr. having himself a very impressive OTA and minicamp period? I thought the guy would get number 46, which is weird to see, by the way. It's like, okay, who is this? I thought he would be a cut guy, like, day one of cuts. It's like, there's no way Terrance Marshall Jr., this, second round pickup out of LSU, he's never made it anywhere in the league. He couldn't make it in Carolina. He's not going to make it here. Right now, he's on the roster. Now, maybe he goes to practice squad, potentially. But I think right now he would be wide receiver 5. I think they'd keep Johnny Wilson, and then they would keep him, because Wilson would be 4. And then, of course, that leaves, what do you do with the rest of the guys? Because there's, 13 wide receivers in the roster right now.
Right, yeah.
But it's fun. It's really fun to go through this, because I think if you were to watch the you and me version on the Jacksonville Jaguars, or the you and me version on, insert your AFC team here, or NFC team, we wouldn't get to have this much fun with backup players and this excited, because this roster is pretty stacked. It's not too bad. Returning 10 of 11 starters on offense already, kind of helps, because then it's like, oh, hey, everybody else that you add or you bring in is just the backups, of course. But yeah, I'm excited about the potential. Terrace Marshall starting to get starting to make some plays. As you mentioned too in the video that I had to include Jalen Hurts' comment, because he doesn't give a lot of praise to very many people. So much like, we say, okay, hey, Lane Johnson calling out Josh Uche, Vic Fangio. Like, to me, Jalen Hurts' pressers are very much like Vic Fangio in the sense that if he calls out a player, like, the ears need to be perked up there, because he does not call him out very. It's like, I mean, name anyone, and he's hard like, pretty good. Like that, it's like very, very basic. But for him to specifically say, yeah, we've had some guys, Terrace Marshall, and then he paused for a second and says, made a few really big plays for us. It's like, hang on. This is OTA, so you don't have to just be like, made a few really big plays for us. But for him to say that about Terrace Marshall, I'm like, okay, hey, that's actually getting some praise. Smitty knows him from all the way back in high school, played 7-on-7. So there's some relationships there. And then it was also interesting because I had to include Danny Gray, and I'm kind of like, I think those are very close in terms of their competition in making the roster. But I thought it was fascinating that Danny Gray was the go-to guy all of last year, or the latter part of last year for scout team of he's going to be wide receiver 1. So like Quinyon Mitchell, Darius Slay, Cooper DeJean getting the reps against the best team's receiver. Gray was the one that was watching film and trying to mimic those receivers to help the corners. And then he also went on record, Danny Gray did, and said, if I had been there the starting training camp, I would have been on the 53-man roster. There's no doubt in his mind. So now, again, it's a receiver. We know that a lot of those have the attitudes of a diva and the confidence, and maybe sometimes too much. But I don't mind that for a receiver like that. But for him to have that confidence, and he has been playing really well so far, or showing really well, minded all in OTAs, I think that there's a case to be made. Like, does Anaya Smith? He's been working out with AJ. He's been, trying to glean some from that. Does he have an opportunity there? That's going to be a competition. Johnny Wilson has not. I mean, Anthony DeBona, he did the breakdown on the stock up, stock down, but Johnny missed a few practices. He didn't have the best showing. Had a couple drops earlier this season too, as well. So I don't know. It'll be very interesting. It's like you have AJ, Smitty, Jahan are obvious, but then after that, I mean, you could kind of take your pick. If are you gonna take 4 receivers? Is it gonna be 5? Who are those guys gonna be? It'll be fascinating to watch, because you could go so many different directions. I totally agree. And it does feel like Johnny Wilson is going to get it just because of his blocking. Like that kind of feels like a lock. Obviously, he has to take the next step in being a pass catcher and a real threat. Virtually was non-existent last year, but they liked him so much, especially with 2 wide receiver sets when they were going to run the football out of the pistol with multiple tight end looks. Wilson was kind of their guy, and they really, really liked him on the outside blocking. And there's a couple of, forget which games, but he had some incredible blocks where you're like, oh, That's why he remains on the active 53. It's not for his catching ability, not that you needed it with the rest of the receivers, but he seems like a lock unless he has a terrible camp. And then it's, 7, 8 guys fighting for one because they're going to have 5 wide receivers active spot. And then they'll probably keep 3 maybe on the practice squad and kind of do the Covey thing where they bring you up and put you back down and bring you up, put you back down. And so, I don't know. It's pretty darn exciting overall. But, we talk about names that are getting hype here and there, then those are some other ones to go ahead and keep an eye on. I think the name that has gotten the most hype, Josh, I think it's probably Jalen Hunt. I think everyone is raving that Jalen Hunt is about to just go nuclear. And it might even be faster than what Nolan Smith did, because truly Nolan Smith was, like most of the young defenders, really picking up towards the latter part of the year. He had some plays. You go back to, let's say, the Giant game was week 5 or 6, and he had a nice sack in that game. He was disruptive. But Nolan Smith became like the edge rusher, especially in the postseason. And the idea that Jalen Hunt could become that level or around that level, we'll see, week 1 is also very exciting, because everyone keeps saying he looks bigger, he looks faster, he looks smarter. And for as much as he was like, give me a crash course in edge rusher, 101, year 1, he's in like a 400 or 4,000 level class now. He's like learning all the techniques. He wants to have his own move. He wants to make sure his bull rush is good and his swim move is powerful and his spin move is, just right. He could be in for a really impressive 2025 season. And again, we're talking about people that really have been standing out so far during minicamp and OTAs, and Jalen Hunt probably is number 1 on that list of like, yeah, this guy looks really, really good and way better than he was. Now, of course, we got plenty more stuff happening the next couple of days and weeks. I think we have our first Eagle player interview this coming week. Don't have it officially official. It's like 95% confirmed. So stay tuned, subscribe. I'm Thomas Mott. Enjoy your weekend. This has been the Thomas Mott Show.